What is going on, Hive Warriors? So today we have the truth about intermittent fasting in 60 seconds. And this is from Medschoolinsiders. So let's see what they have to say about it, and then we can discuss. Is this really the truth about intermittent fasting in 60 seconds? I mean, I've been studying intermittent fasting for almost 10 years. Literally have read from back to front over 100 studies plus. Let's see if they're right. Let's see if they're right. All right.
Many of us have heard of intermittent fasting. Most people use the term incorrectly. Intermittent fasting, in its most strict form, is undergoing a fast of at least 24 hours at some frequency, i.e. intermittently. What most people are actually referring.
What? That is incorrect. Actually, intermittent fasting is an umbrella term. It is not an actual physical or an actual system. It's an umbrella term. So when you hear intermittent fasting, that can mean 5-2 diet, which means you don't fast for 5 days of the week, you fast for 2 days of the week, any 2 days that you choose. It could be the alternate day fasting diet, where you eat one day, fast the next, eat one day, fast the next, so on and so forth. There could be what it looks like he's going to say, time restricted eating, which time restricted eating has been given its own kind of space, which is the 16-8. But then you could do the 20 hour fast, 4 hours eating, which is considered by many the warrior diet. Then there's 1 meal a day. All of those fall under the umbrella of intermittent fasting. If you look at the studies, they'll say intermittent fasting did this, or intermittent fasting showed this, or intermittent fasting was not superior or was superior. Whatever it is, when you look at that, you'll notice that there's so many different versions of intermittent fasting. What they are doing is getting more specific. So they'll say early time restricted feeding, which means you're eating earlier, and because it's time restricted feeding, you're doing the 16-8, or just time restricted feeding or time restricted eating. So there's so many different little terms for the small ones, like 1 meal a day or whatever. But intermittent fasting is not a thing. What he was just saying, eating after 24 hours, it's not a thing. It's an umbrella term for all of these fasting things. All right, let's continue, just in case you were confused.
Referring to when they talk about IF is time-restricted feeding, where you limit the hours during which you eat each day to a feeding window. The most popular schedules are 16-8, meaning you fast for...
No, he's incorrect. Time-restricted feeding is 16-8. That's 100. If you're seeing a study that says time-restricted feeding, they're talking about the 16-8 model. That's what they're talking about. If they say extended time-restricted feeding, they'll extend into 18 hours or whatever. But 16 hours is time-restricted feeding.
16 hours of the day, and only eat during the remaining 8 hours of the day, and also 18-6. But semantics aside, are intermittent fasting and time-restricted feeding good for you? According to research, IF and TRF will not help you lose more weight than traditional methods of caloric restriction. However, they do appear to be superior at preserving lean muscle mass when losing weight.
What? Okay, first of all, they are not. Intermittent fasting is not superior in preserving lean mass and muscle weight, because if you look at the science of it and the research, intermittent fasting removes a pillar of protein synthesis. One of the pillars of protein synthesis is meal frequency, high meal frequency. However, it doesn't mean that you can't retain muscle or build muscle with intermittent fasting. It just means it's not as optimal if you have more pillars, right? So if, for example, if you could eat at a caloric surplus, that's better than eating at a caloric deficit. Because that provides protein synthesis. If you can consume adequate amount of protein, that's better than consuming a low amount of protein because of protein synthesis, right? If you do resistance training, that's better than not doing resistance training because of protein synthesis. So there is an element of like, because one, you're trying to lose weight with intermittent fasting, you're already at a caloric deficit that's not conducive to being as optimal as possible to protein synthesis, and you're not doing meal frequency. You actually are reducing your meal frequency with intermittent fasting, because that's literally part of the design of intermittent fasting. So can you retain muscle? Yes, if you increase your protein, if you do all the other things that you can do like resistance training, workout and increase your protein. Those are the two things that you can control in your favor with intermittent fasting. You can then grow and retain muscle and what have you. But to say that it is better based off of the research makes no sense to me. The research, if anything, shows that it has a better position when it comes to body fat burning, considering the fact that just the biological elements of intermittent fasting, it is going to partition a lot of your body fat to replace your glycogen, your glucose actually, for your brain. So because of that switch, that can happen. But like this is a weird thing to say. Oh, it's not. It has intermittent fasting doesn't show that it's better, but it does show. It doesn't show that it's better for fat loss, but it does show that it's better for muscle. What research are you talking about? Like, you can't pick one or two studies. I can't stand when people pick one or two studies and say, "Oh, this is what." No, look at the breadth of the studies. What does the majority of the studies say? That's where we should be leaning, not one or two individual studies that you select. But let's continue.
Other benefits include improvements in fasting blood sugar, insulin sensitivity, and other markers of cardiometabolic health. IF and TRF have also been associated with reductions in various markers of systemic inflammation and oxidative stress, which may help prevent heart disease in the long term. What are your experiences with intermittent fasting and time-restricted feeding? Let us know with a comment.
All right, I give this a C+. A lot of misinformation here in 60 seconds. More like the misinformation about intermittent fasting in 60 seconds. But not trying to pile on them. But it was one of those things where, people, it's not so much that they did the research, but they go by a consensus out there, right? Which that actually kind of threw me off, because the way he expressed that it shows that it's best for lean muscle mass. Are there studies that have shown that it was very positive in retaining lean muscle mass? Absolutely. That's the case. But is it actually the case when you look at the breadth of the studies that we've have, the meta-analysis, the systematic reviews? No, it is not optimal. And then if you think about it, it wouldn't be optimal for muscle retention and muscle building, because it removes a pillar where you could actually apply, which is meal frequency, if you weren't doing intermittent fasting. So we're not, I'm a proponent for intermittent fasting because it's so beneficial, right? But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it does everything under the sun, because that's how you muddy the waters in actually providing the truth to the viewers, right? If you just say, "Oh, it's perfect no matter what. Oh, it's perfect no matter what. Oh, it's perfect no matter what." What you want to do? You want to get taller? Intermittent fasting. What you want to do? You want to become a bodybuilder? Intermittent fasting. You cannot do that. Intermittent fasting has its place and does a lot of things really well, but the things that it does well, it does them really well, and the things that it doesn't do, it doesn't do. So we can't pretend that it's a switchblade of like anything you want. Biologically, within the fitness industry, anything you want, intermittent fasting can give you. It can give you a lot. It can give you a lot, but it isn't the be all end all, right? Studies show that it is not optimal for building muscle as compared to just caloric restriction, but of course with protein being equated, not just calories, but protein also being equated and resistance training being equated. All right, guys, until the next one, thank you so much. Thank you for stopping by. That was intermittent fasting explained in 60 seconds and then re-explained in over 9 minutes and 10 seconds, because we're going to end it right now. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Peace out. Love you. One.